Good morning or good afternoon. Hello, everybody. We hope you had a great long weekend. My name is Satara. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at FuelCycle, and I'm joined today by an awesome panel of market research experts. We have with us today Bill Bloom, CEO of Fast Focus, Ken Matson, Chief Marketing Officer, and Rick Kelly, Chief Product Officer at FuelCycle. And between the three of these gentlemen, there are years worth of marketing research experience working with some of the best brands in the world, from Church & Dwight to Google to Carhartt. So we're thrilled to bring you such great thought leaders in the space today. And we'll be discussing different ways you can accelerate e-commerce sales and start winning on the eShelves. We have about 30 minutes, so before we get started, the audience is automatically muted. We'd love to answer your questions at the end of the session, so please add them into the Q&A icon chat located at the bottom of your screen. You can also chat using the same bar below right next to the Q&A icon if you have any technical issues or would like to get in touch with one of us. So with that said, we're super excited and have an awesome session planned for you today. So Rick, go ahead and get us started.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Seth. And I'm really excited to be presenting with Bill and Ken here today. We're going to be talking about e-commerce in general, especially some of the work that the Fast Focus team is helping or doing to help brands succeed in a new normal, right? Where we have e-commerce is more important than it ever has been. And really, this is part of an existing trend that we've seen happen in the marketplace. As an example, I think e-commerce, which was about 5% of market share about 10 years ago, reached about 16% in the last, or in 2018. And of course, the current economic crisis has accelerated the rate of e-commerce, as people aren't going into retail stores or anything like that anymore. And so we see a large, migration, very rapid migration to e-commerce in general. Some data that can support this is, number one, is that digital revenues for e-commerce based companies actually spiked about 41% during the first 15 days of Q2 2020 over the same period last year. So up 41%. Products like baby products, grocery, pharmaceuticals, e-commerce growth is off the charts as well. And so with that comes new expectations for e-commerce and high fidelity prototyping capabilities that enable brands to be successful on the web. And also traditional like enterprises that once are using like legacy technology stacks are now competing with D2C and SMB brands that are using large platforms like Shopify to offer best-in-class technology solutions to SMBs and D2C brands to enable them to compete on the same level playing field as many large enterprises once or have had in the past. And so with that, I'm super excited to introduce the Fast Focus team and let them talk to you about some additional solutions that they're bringing out and bringing to Fast Focus in particular that to help accelerate success in e-commerce. Bill and Ken, over to you guys.
Hey, thanks so much, Rick. We've been excited to be a FuelCycle partner for well over a year now, and it's a great relationship, and we're thankful to be here. I hope everyone is staying safe and is good out there. And as Rick said, this is a new normal. But even before all of this, what was happening online were folks were starting to shop more and more, doing more and more e-commerce shopping, and particularly with mobile. With the changes in the environment, we have to start thinking about, and brands think about, what's our messaging, what's the underlying shifts. So we've been doing a lot of research with our partners about those shifts. You know, what's the messaging and tone out there? How should you be adapting your marketing to these shifts? And as Rick said, the rise of e-commerce is huge. Of course, right now, there's 60% or more of all shopping is being done on e-commerce. That's starting to change as you see stores starting to open, but that's going to be a slow change. But what this has done is accelerated what's happening online. One is almost 60% or more are shopping online, but also the shopping online is moving faster and faster to mobile shopping. So desktops are starting to decline. People are starting to use smartphones more and more. The majority of the shopping online is being done with smartphones. So they're shopping, browsing, and purchasing online using the smartphones. The problem is that most customers are getting a terrible experience. Here it says 12% are not happy with the experience. And just a little bit of a funny graphic, but it's pretty spot on. On the desktop, you know, they're optimized for the desktop. They're showing you their hero images. They're showing you their marketing copy in a really good way to digest. But on the mobile phone, that's not the case. And that's where we're coming in and thinking about what are the processes, how do you operationalize a mobile strategy, and more importantly, how do you test to make sure that what you're doing online works? So I'm going to turn it over to Ken, who's going to talk about the process that he's put in place and how that works, and then we'll talk about specifically Fast Focus and how we test for that. Go ahead, Ken.
And thanks for having me on the panel today. I love that image. That really shows an example of how we're dealing with a 1.25 inch screen on smartphones. There definitely is a hockey stick effect right now with everyone using mobile phones. We don't have to send that message out. I think everybody realizes that. Before the COVID-19 happened, there was a lot of research and approaches and methods to how do we actually optimize imagery products on mobile. Not a lot of effort, not a lot of science behind it, a lot of different approaches. But now with what's going on out there, I'll go back 2 years, folks at University of Cambridge, specifically Sam Waller, led a team to start to look at this canvas of 1.25 inches and saying, what does the consumer really see there? What are the things that are building confidence in as they scroll through the mobile phone, build confidence in purchasing that item? And through their research and through the science part of it and the psychology of it, whether it be visual, whether it be exploiting, as you're seeing on this image here, the different unique selling props, there's a method and some guidance around how to treat those images. It's a little bit more work, so brands are starting to adapt. What we're going to see here is different levels, S1, S2. This came out of the Cambridge team. They also worked with Unilever on it and some other big brands. And how do we actually take that hero shot, adapt it, get it ready for mobile so that as a consumer, we're more confident in buying it and understanding what the ingredients are, the size, taste, flavor, and the list goes on. So this is, a layer of work that a lot of the brands and agencies are doing now. And now ignited by the COVID-19, there's a lot of different approaches to that. There's guides, but people do deviate. Some people, brands will take the standards or the guidance or the guidelines and treat them a little bit differently. So when working with brands around this is when I first saw Fast Focus, the idea to be able to get the consumer involved in this process way up front in the concepting and in the creative, and let them vote and or look at the adaptations. And that's where I call it crowdsourcing the consumer into the creative process. This was a brilliant platform. The timing is perfect, and this is where we are today. And I'll hand this off back to you, Bill, to talk to this slide.
Okay, and Ken's going to get into the maturity model and what that maturity looks like. And maturity, as he will explain, is about optimizing your images so that they get clicked on and so that purchases get made. When Ken and I met up about a year ago, we started talking about the fact that Fast Focus is mobile first. Fast Focus is a virtual shopping experience that uses currency, and I'll talk about that. And I want to also say, although we're talking about CPG, this is also great for health and beauty or other categories. We've used it for financial services. We've used it for all sorts of consumer packaged goods and other categories. So this is not just for one category, but reaches across really well. When I set out to create Fast Focus, the parameters I put around it, or the milestones we wanted to meet, was I wanted to be mobile, because a lot of research I was using and that folks were using over the years was desktop first. And we all know that mobile, specifically for millennials, Gen Z, but really all of us now, are our first access to everything, whether it's talking to each other, watching videos, entertainment, but really for commerce. Millennials and Gen Z in particular don't take to as well to traditional media. So we wanted something that was gamified a bit and would engage them. It turns out that baby boomers and Gen X and the rest of us also like to be entertained, and we also are going faster and more busy. So we wanted to create an engaging gamified experience. We wanted the results to this to come in fast. And what's great working with FuelCycle is they're set up with their communities and other applications and solutions to enable us to work at speed and with agility. And over the last year, we came out with our first full release a little over a year ago. Over the last year, we've been able to work with some of the top brands out there, like Unilever, Church & Dwight, Citibank, McDonald's. So we've proven it. People are taking to the speed and agility. As I said, this is showing a packaging idea, and essentially you'll see up here that you're given some virtual currency. The amount of currency you're given depends on the number of ideas, but essentially you're instructed to swipe right to add positive tokens and swipe left to add negative tokens until your currency runs out. This is very behavioral, and it captures what you would do, not just what you would think. Okay. We do capture some qualitative feedback. So in addition to the behavioral aspect of spending the currency, we then ask you why you spent X amount of tokens on a specific idea. For each idea that you spend tokens on, we get your qualitative feedback, and we report on both. Not only do we report on both, but we report in tandem on both. And what you could see here is the intelligence gathers as soon as the first participant weighs in. Our reports are in real time, and we'll get a little bit into how that works. We have 3 scores. We wanted to make this easy for market researchers and for brands who aren't market researchers specifically to be able to make investment grade decisions. Our first score is a passion score, and that is based on how passionate a consumer who weighs in is. We run an algorithm. We decide a certain amount of tokens for a specific study reaches the level of passion. And in this case, what this score tells you is 23% of the participants were passionate. The second score is an idea score. This is likability. So this is how wide, how many people liked it, not necessarily would purchase it, but would like it. And controversiality is how controversial was this idea. So for instance, vanilla or chocolate ice cream may not be controversial. A lot of people will like it, but there may not be a tremendous amount of passion. Chocolate chip, butterscotch Rocky Road might be 30% are passionate about it. Half the market doesn't like it, and it's pretty controversial, but it may have enough market share. It might have a high enough passion score and purchase intent that you want to put it out there. So it's very easy to train folks on how to use these 3 scores combined to make decisions. Real fast, we have taken a traditional analytic method called turf analysis, total unduplicated reach and frequency, added our passion to it, and have a better mousetrap. So essentially, if you're looking to put out 2 or 3 products or 2 or 3 or 4 different package ideas, it'll tell you what combination will reach the most customers, but not only reach them with passion. So we're using turf analysis for e-commerce, m-commerce, and particularly for launching new product lines on e-commerce or m-commerce. And I'm going to pass it back to Rick, and I'm sorry, not to Rick, to Ken, and we're going to go through his methodology, and talk about how Fast Focus works within a methodology so that you can become more mature and successful on e-commerce and m-commerce.
I was going to say, Bill, you really surprised me. I hadn't prepared for this portion, so I'm much happier to have Ken speak to it.
Exactly.
Next time, Rick.
So not to get geeky here, but what we've done in the last 2 years, I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier, with the igniting platform of mobile and purchasing from mobile. I've been asked by a couple of agencies and or brands to understand what that looks like. And I love maturity models. I think that it's a great way, if you can do it visually, take a snapshot of where the brand and or agency might be in understanding, for example, this is about mobile images and how to treat them and how to optimize them. It's a good way to tell the story. And then also think about through attributes, which, for example, an ad hoc, which is your first level. I would say most of the maturity models out there, whether they're progressive or capabilities driven or a hybrid thereof, this is pretty much a hybrid, but each one is pretty much based on 1 to 5. And real quick, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just so we can manage your expectations around where you might be, most firms are probably between 2 and 3. So before we go through the attributes here, and then their drive would be to get to the higher level. We'll talk about that later. So the ad hoc, simply, we bubbled up some of the attributes. We're not going to go through all of them. For mobile image, they're probably just shooting tabletop. They're only doing 2D. There's no guides or methods around their workflows and processes. They're not mobile specific. They're really about creating a hero shot, and then they'll work on it to go to mobile. If they get to the next level, a more organized area, they're starting to define workflows. They're looking at higher quality captures and building requirements around that. But there's still a little bit of ad hoc ways of working. And then eventually we start to get them up to or introduce them to a digitized world where now they're becoming more digitized, getting away from the ad hoc, but more importantly, starting to connect to different ways of working. So now that they're going away from tabletop, we're introducing them to 3D and what that workflow might look like. And we'll talk about 3D later, and develop and deploy 3D objects for proof of concepts as well.
And so this is where Fast Focus starts to come in. As you become more mature, we definitely believe that testing, specifically on mobile for e-commerce, is essential. As we said, all the guidelines in the world are great, specifically the GS1 guidelines from Cambridge and Unilever, and other companies have joined in on that, but the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And so now we're starting to use Fast Focus. So as you become more mature, as you're starting to really understand how to develop for 2D, you're going to build it in so that now you can test your 2D images in Fast Focus, your product images, as you're going through the cycle of development. And we're starting at this point, and we'll be releasing this in a couple of weeks, to be able to test 3D, and we'll talk about why that's important to you. As we go into the next level, you're starting to develop for 3D in addition to very mature development on 2D, and you're starting to experiment with augmented reality, which is also going to be very important for brands to get into. They're starting to use it. It's not just in the laboratory anymore. And here, Fast Focus, you're going deeper in your testing. So you're using our shopping experience, our virtual currency, to mimic a mobile shopper and inform all of your development. So because we can do this fast, you could start testing with sketches and comps, develop several of those, see what attributes are clicking with your consumer, inform your next round of design, and keep iterating. We can get you feedback the same day that you can iterate with, and that's essential. So all of your designs will be informed with customer intelligence And that's what Fast Focus and Fuel Cycle are all about. In this phase, we're able to test 3D, and we're starting to test for AR. And I'll let Ken do the last step here because it's the step no one has ever reached. So he can tell you why and how.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad we stopped there because first of all, let's get a reality check. Most of the brands that we're working with, whether they're national or global, CPG, FMCG, they're at an organized level, but they're really looking and starting to look at how to take the 2D hero shots and start to optimize them and adapt them for mobile. So a lot of them are just starting to get there. I know we're throwing 3D at you here. 3D is the next level, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to see a lot more effort about optimizing 2D for mobile and building that trust with the consumer and things like that. And then you throw in, the crowdsourcing and the ability to have consumers vote and review those and really dial in, get the object that's going on that 1.25 screen, really produce good information to gain confidence. And eventually that's going to be lift for the brand. So the fifth level is a moving target. And I say this with every maturity model. I don't care if it's the mobile or it's a DAM or a CMS. That's where technology is being introduced every 6 months, that those attributes are changing. It is definitely something we want to look at and tease the brand and or the agencies to say, look, this is where it can go. But most brands are going to end up somewhere between 3 and 4 if they start to look at the attributes and put a plan together to mature their way. So that's the maturity model. So now just to lift the hood on how folks are working today, 90% of the brands, CPG, FMCG again, are running a process that's very manual. It's controlled. There's definitely a structure here, but they're creating mock-ups, physical pieces. They're photographing those pieces, they're retouching them, and then they're getting them ready for all those channels, whether it's social, traditional advertising, the list goes on. But you're creating a physical piece. And in that legacy way of working, you're also doing focus groups. You're bringing people in to review the packaging or maybe a planogram and things like that. That's the old way. Now we got COVID-19, nobody's doing a focus group, and this is bringing us to the modern way of working, which there are some brands that are doing this. They're actually taking those Illustrator files, they're converting them to 3D objects, and very quickly, and they're able to take materials, whether it's cardboard, plastics, and emulate that product from the given Illustrator file or the native file. And the brilliant part here is that you're able to take that 3D, not only share it, collaborate on it, but this is where we're seeing Fast Focus and Fuel Cycle take advantage of, hey, we can bring people in, we can actually view these now and vote on them, and then treat them for the different channels. So, and with this platform, you're probably yielding 60% efficiency or speed to market or to shelf, eShelf or physical shelf.
Okay, so we're going to fast forward a little bit, but I do want to say that we are getting ready for 3D. The high-level 3D is a great new development because, especially with what's going on with shopping, it makes it more intimate and lets you access it. So we are developing Fast Focus for 3D and extending our methodology there. But I do want to give time for questions, and so we're going to go to questions right now.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. So we have a couple questions that came in. So the first one is this only good for CPG, or what about other industries or categories?
Yep. And so I would say 60–70% right now is consumer packaged goods. But like I said earlier, we've worked with health, we've worked with finance. And I see the second question, so I'm going to combine the two. This is great because it's behavioral. The main reason we went with a currency and a predictive type market is so that it was behavioral. It's not looking at what consumers think it's not looking at what they say they would do, it's looking at what they would do. And that's very important. More and more behavioral responses are giving you better insights into shoppers. So we have the scarcity of currency, and we're using that currency to see what you would do. So I think that hopefully answers traditional methods. And in particular, if you look at Likert scales, for instance, it's asking you 1 to 5. You could say you have no scarcity. You could rate everything a 5. We have scarcity, which gives you a limited shopper experience and gives you better results. So,
And Bill, thanks so much for that. We do have a couple minutes left, and we do have a few more questions. And we have a question here that says, will this help us optimize our product lines or extend our lines? If so, how?
Yeah, and particularly, so the baseline is using the behavioral method with the qualitative feedback. But like I said, our turf product, if you're looking at a new product line, and we're working with some major retailers who are doing this, some of this is for private label, but we're also working with brands on this. So our turf analytics enables you to take 6 or 7 products, up to 10, that you're thinking of putting into a line. And by using the turf analysis, understand which set of products will have the greatest reach and impact. So using that piece of analytics will really help you extend your product lines, starting with which product line should we go into, health, beauty, etc. And then if we choose health product line, let's say, which of these, we have 10 ideas for products or 15, we only want to start with 3 or 4. Our total unduplicated reach and frequency product will do a great job at helping you with that.
Great. And one more question before we wrap things up. How do you isolate certain variables, like image or text content, to define the increase in sales in a given e-commerce site? When Fast Focus says X% of people like this new image, how much does it relate to the actual percent of increase of sales?
Well, that's a great question. And we can start to correlate passion to sales purchase intent. So I will say we can correlate it, but we cannot perfectly predict that. So I'd love to go into depth. That's a long talk that we could bring our data scientists in with, but essentially the passion correlates well with purchase intent.
Thank you so much. Well, Rick, Ken, Bill, we are at the top of the hour, and to the audience, thank you so much for joining. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar shortly, so please make sure you share with any friends or colleagues that would benefit from this information as well. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can always reach us at sales@FuelCycle. And with that said, we hope everybody has a great day. Stay happy, healthy, and we're here to answer any of your questions in the meantime. Gentlemen, thank you.